Okay, good evening, gentlemen. Now that we've watched England score a penalty, now we can actually have a share. We can be a little bit calmer, although we're not guaranteed anything. Pardon?
I would say anything can happen in the next half hour.
Anything can happen in the next half hour, and the truth is that I don't expect that many people to be turning on to our live Facebook share. Although here, Rabbi Saunders is here. Daniel, you're not watching the match. I'm pretty impressed. So we have a few people that have come on. Multitasking. I think people are watching. I don't know if people are watching us here at the same time as watching the football. I don't know if you can hear me and you can hear them at the same time. We can put the football on silent and listen to me in the background. I don't know. Okay. Either way. Yeah. Right. Again, today's going to be a shorter share, but I want to discuss maybe one or two things in Parasha Pinchas, something that I found quite interesting. Hi, Brian. Nice to see you. Okay. And that's the following. Parasha Pinchas begins with something that we look at. Oh, excitement! Right, more excitement. Right, there's a match going on. They're watching the match at 8, so there'll be some background noise. It's not cheering for my share. It's just cheering for what England is doing and in the football or not doing. Okay. We read something in the beginning of Parasha Pinchas that sometimes it sits badly with many of us, and it's hard. Well, Shaldi's here, and he's there at the same time, so that's pretty cool. He's trying to ride both, dance both simchas. So we have Pinchas comes forward. We read in last week's parasha that the Jewish people served the avodah zarah of the Baal Peor, served the avodah zarah of what is known as Peor, and not only did they serve the avodah zarah of Peor, the Gemara speaks about exactly how they went about enticing the men and seducing the men, and the women then seduced the men, and then ended up, it started with avodah zarah, it started with immorality, and then it then moved on to also avodah zarah. And a man comes forward, a man steps forward, whose name was Zimri ben Salu, who was the Nasi, one of the princes of Shimon, and he says, this woman, can I marry her, can I not marry her? Midianite woman. So he says, absolutely not. So he says, really? Last thing I know, there's a very famous leader amongst the Jewish people by the name of Moshe who married a Midianite woman. Who allowed you to marry your wife? Okay? That's a pretty harsh comment there. Yeah? Jewish people, I think we can take this as an aside, have never been known, when we're angry, we've not been known for being nice or politically correct or anything else. We let it flow as we feel it. So there's this real anger, he says, and then they goes and he takes this woman. Hi, Will. He takes this woman and he has an avera, he has an affair with her in front of everybody. And Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron Cohen is enraged by the entire idea of this. He steps forward and he kills both of them. And in this week's parasha, we read about Pinchas, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu starts off. He says, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron Cohen, Pinchas the son of Elazar, son of Aaron Cohen, Hey Shives Chamosim al Bnei Yisrael, brought back my wrath of Bnei Yisrael, Bekanos Kinasi B'Sochem, when he went and he took my revenge for that I was supposed to take amongst them. Lachein Amar, therefore say, Hineni Nosno as Brisi Sham, I give him my covenant of peace. And it's really interesting to think about the idea of kanos, the idea of zealotry. You have this idea over here that zealotry, Pinchas goes and he kills a man and a woman in the act of Aveira, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, this is excellent, this is great. And it almost doesn't sit right with us. And then he gives Pinchas a bracha, he gives him a blessing, and the blessing he gives him, what's the blessing he gives him? Shalom, peace. It sounds wrong. Of all the blessings you give the guy, he'd say, I don't know, I bless you, you should become a great general. Yeah, that makes sense. You look like a violent guy. You can become a great general. But the last thing you'd expect is a blessing of peace. That's the blessing that he gets. So I'd like to discuss a little bit about the idea of kanos, but I don't really want to focus in on the idea of zealotry or kanos, but more on a separate idea, on the idea of shalom, and I think a very important idea, an idea that has gotten lost, I think, in our generation. Our generation has become a generation of tolerance. I know what I'm saying now is not going to go down so well with everybody, but our generation has become a generation of tolerance. And the story has become almost that I need to tolerate you. You can do whatever you want to. And I need to tolerate your lifestyle choices, your choices of partner, Jewish, not, whatever you want, whatever you wish has become, this is what I want to do. Are you going to judge me? Are you going to say, I'm not good, I'm no good because I don't do this and because I don't do that? And yes, it's true. I think in our generation, there is, we live in a generation, we live in a, I would say, in a weaker generation. I know I'm looking around at the people here that they're all older than me. I think the youngest one of you is at least 10 years older than me. That's the minimum. We're going to talk about here. I don't know. So when I speak of the generation, but I look at our generation, and I look at a generation that we don't handle criticism well. And we don't handle people not respecting us well. And we don't handle people not respecting our opinions very well. We don't handle any of that well. We're very much into the idea that I am who I am. And you like it? Great. You don't like it? Tough. Right? But what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us over here in this Parasha, and specifically with the idea of Pinchas, when we speak about Shalom, what is Shalom? What other word would Shalom come from? Shalem. Shalem means complete or whole. There was a completeness in the way Pinchas behaved. And what's the completeness in the way Pinchas behaved? And I think this is such an important idea. Pinchas realized that religion and life is not all about smiling constantly at everybody else. No matter what's happening, no matter what the story is, it's okay, it's fine. No, I love you. No, you stepped all over my face, that's okay. No, you punched me, that's okay. Everything's fine.
As long as you're happy.
As long as you're happy. You do what makes you happy and I will always accept you. Pinchas says that's not how things work. Sometimes, and in life, that's not how things work. Many people are into peace. Many people are into peace until somebody steps on their toe. Right? The most peace-loving people, some of the nicest people I know, I've watched somebody cross them. I've watched somebody step on the toe a little bit too hard. What happens? Boom! Like a volcano. And you think to yourself, what happened? What happened to these people? Oh my goodness. I get to, it's interesting to give a shir with all the cheering in the background. I've never given a shir with cheering in the background. And I'm asking questions, people go, yeah! They love my shir, one another. The problem is if the other team scores a goal, people are going to be booing me for giving the shir. That point, that wasn't a good part of the shir, Rabbi. Really, next time, do a better job.
It's not going to happen, don't worry.
No, who knows, right? But the question is, when you look at life, can life be lived with only one trait? Or do we need to find, as the Rambam says, you need to find the golden path. You need to find the golden mean. Somewhere in between one and the other, right? So I'll give you an example. The Rambam gives different examples. I'll give you a few examples. The Rambam says, for example, we talk about arrogance and humility. And I think we've mentioned this before. A person who is arrogant, who likes a person who's arrogant? Nobody. People really, if you meet somebody that's stuck up and he's properly stuck up, it's just, you just want to get out. You're just going to get away from him. Everything's about me and how I do things and how this is good and this is no good and I'm thinking and I. Right? However, what do we say about a person who is who's only got humility, who's only humble and nothing else? What would you say about that?
You get trodden on.
Pardon?
You get trodden on.
He will get trodden on. Because if I can do anything to you and it's okay, if I walk over you, if you say I'm the most humble person, right? There are religions that say if you get struck on one cheek, turn the other cheek, right? I've never seen anybody do that in practice, right? I've never seen anybody boom, Walk over to, try this, walk over to your local priest, knock him on the face and say, can I have the other side now? I don't think anybody, because in practice that doesn't work. Most people say that doesn't work. I can't get walloped in the face and then turn the other cheek and say, you can hit me here as well. Because if I do that, you'll beat the living daylights out of me. Yeah, if I walked over, you say, can I have your bike? That's fine. You can take my bike. I don't need anything. How about your suit jacket? How about your car keys? I'm exceedingly humble. Take everything I have. Right? What would you say to someone like that? You're crazy. You lost your marbles. That's not how people live. That's not how we can function as human beings. You need to have a certain amount of self-worth. You need to have a certain amount of self-confidence. Otherwise, you're not a humble person. You're a doormat. And the Chovas Halvavos, one of the famous Mussar Sfarim, writes about humility. He says, if a person is humble because he doesn't understand his self-worth, then that is not really humility. Then he's no less, this is the example, this is what he said, then he's no less than an animal that's being herded about because it doesn't realize it actually has the power to overcome the shepherd or the master, whoever it might be. Just herded about, but this, you say, oh, look how humble this animal is. The animal lets itself be taken on a lead. This is how it's been domesticated to do it. But it's not, you don't look at an animal and say an animal has humility. It doesn't have humility. It's been subdued because it can't make its way out. So if a person who's been subdued because he feels like an animal, because he feels like I can't protect myself, I can't do anything. All right, fine. But we don't look at that person and we say to him, wow, what a great individual. What a deep philosophy, what a great philosophy. It's not a great philosophy. You're crazy. People are stepping and trotting all over you. That's not right. So you can't be arrogant, but you can't be too humble either. So what do you need to do? You need to find the middle path between the two of them and say to yourself, the right way, the correct way is to find a path in the middle. To use a bit of arrogance, Michael, if you need to go in the middle, don't feel bad. Okay, fine. But if you do need to go in the middle, we're almost done anyway. But if you have to walk out, please do. You have to find that middle path. Now, most of us will struggle with finding the exact middle because the middle is really, really hard to find. So you have to find the middle. Sometimes we get angry even though we shouldn't get angry, and sometimes we let people do things to us even though we shouldn't really allow them to step all over us. We still will have that in our lives also. But at least we're not only humble, we're not only arrogant. In religion, another thing that's important is it cannot all be about peace. A religion that is only about peace, it's only about I accept you for everything you do, and I accept you for everything you want, and you can do anything you want, you can say anything you want, and I have to accept. That's not a religion. Because let's think about it. What is religion really? I mean, this is without going into zealotry, but what is it? We're saying this is the will of God. God has come to us, because otherwise, if this is the will of man, I mean, who cares? Why do I have to do what Moshe Rabbeinu said? We believe this is God's will. God wants us to do something, he's given us a specific regime. He's saying, this is what I'd like you to do, be my holy people. So we have this ideal of whatever it is that God wants us to live for. And then people say, well, I'm not really interested in what God's doing. Okay? We all have that in a small sense inside us, and some in a bigger sense. Right? Well, people say, well, yeah, I know, I should really be doing X, Y, and Z. You have lots of people say, I should really be. We've all said I should really be, but. So we all have that inside us. But now the question becomes, do we say that's okay? I don't know if we can say that's okay. Yeah, you know what? You're not doing what God wants. That's fine. That's fine. God's merciful. I'm merciful. Everyone's merciful. If you take that attitude, what does that really mean? It all doesn't make a difference. And if it all doesn't make a difference, if it's really not important, then what would God give this to us for? God's like, here's a suggestion of things to do. What if I don't want to do them? Well, then, enjoy your life and do things differently. God's not giving us suggestions. It's not 613 suggestions. If you feel like eating kosher, eat kosher. If you don't feel like eating kosher, that's fine. Don't have to. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow also not fine. Try the day after. Yeah? We have to realize that there's any religion, anything that's worthwhile will need to have some form of backbone behind it. We'll need to have something behind it that says, this is important. This can't always be ignored. And if it becomes a religion that entirely becomes ignored, then it becomes entirely worthless. Because if it's all about, I do what I want to do, I do what I think is right, what God says is irrelevant, what are we left with?
But do I have the right to prescribe for other people?
Oh, so that's where zealotry comes in. I think that's what's out. Do you have the right to prescribe for other people? In general, no. And that's why the discussion of Pinchas is a very, very deep discussion. And I don't think in the next 3 or 4 minutes that I have, I'll be able to really speak about it. I'm going to speak about it a little bit on Shabbos because my son's sermon for his bar mitzvah, by the way, all of you here invited, all of you live, if you can join us, please do join us on Shabbos and Shul, 9:15 davening, 11:45 Kiddush. Be a nice Kiddush with Kugel and John. Please try to make it if you can. So you're right. Do I have a right to prescribe to other people? And I think that's the important thing. I think, and as somebody came to me once years ago. He says, Rabbi, I like you. Do you know why I like you? Because you're so tolerant, right? And I thought about it, and I said to myself, I think he's not really understood. There's 2 things going on over here. There's tolerant of the people, and there's the understanding in general. That means I cannot be tolerant on God's behalf and say, God, you know what? People don't keep mitzvahs. I'm fine with that. That's great. That's great. People don't keep mitzvahs. That's wonderful. I'm not one to judge for God. I can't make judgment for God and say, you don't want to keep anything. God's very happy with you no matter who you are. I can't speak for God. What I can do is I can speak for myself. I can say, look, in my mission in trying to bring people closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if I don't tolerate people, if everybody that does anything wrong is going to get an earful from me, how full or how empty is our shul going to be? Very empty, very quickly. Now, I will say to you, by the way, that has nothing to do with our shul. I guarantee you in the frummest of shuls, if you had the Rav walking over to people and saying to them, you're no good, and you're no good, and you're no good, and you're no good, they'd also leave and go somewhere else. Because we as human beings don't handle that well.
Does that mean to say,
yes?
Does that mean to say that you're taking the middle road then?
In what way?
Well, he said before, right?
I don't know if I'm taking the middle road. In my job in trying to help people and to grow and to understand Yiddishkeit, etc., I cannot take the zealous route. That just doesn't work. But then you say, and therefore I'm tolerant. I can't say that I'm tolerant. I hope to be seen as tolerant. I can't say, wow, amazing. Okay, yeah.
That sounds like 3 goals.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. That doesn't sound, I can't say, I can't tolerate for God. I don't have the right to say for God, it's okay, it's not okay. People say, Rabbi, I don't do this, is that okay? How can I say it's okay or not okay? God, if you spoke to God, it's God's religion. So you said to God, I'm not doing X, Y, and Z, is that okay? If God says it's okay, fine. That's fine by me. If God says not okay, then it's also fine by me. But I am not one to say, if I said to you, Michael, I'm taking some money off Michael Greenberg when he's not looking. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Yeah. Right, You're not the one to decide whether I can take money off Michael. It's not your money, right? Sure. So I can't be the one to be making a decision for Hashem. It is okay, it's not. Is it okay or is it not okay if I do certain things? Now, if I know in halach it's okay, then I know in halach it's okay. I can say yes. But if I know if it's not okay, is it okay for me not to be eating kosher? I can't choose for God. And knowing the Torah, the answer should be no. But on the other hand, I will also say, I cannot, as a rabbi, interact with you when I look at you and you and you and you and you and you and everyone here is a sinner. You're all sinners, and I don't want to have anything to do with you. Great, okay, fine. You can quit your job, let somebody else come in here and do the job properly. Okay? But, and this is really important, the middle path does demand a certain amount from each side. A certain amount of tolerance, but on the other hand, a certain amount of lack of understanding. Because any religion that is only about tolerance has no backbone whatsoever. If you're saying no matter what you do, no matter who you are, no matter what you want in life, it's always okay. it's always okay, then really what do you stand for? You stand for nothing. And if you stand for nothing, then you're worth nothing. You have to stand for something. At one point or another, we have to draw a line. We have to say, even us as a shul, as a modern Orthodox shul, that's very open-minded. We're going to have to draw a line somewhere. We're going to say, look, there are certain lines where we draw. But Rabbi, don't you accept me? He says, I accept you fully. But I have to draw lines anyway, because if I don't draw the lines and I can throw out the entire thing, then the whole thing is worthless. Forget it. Who needs this religion? If everything's okay. If everything's okay, let's close the shul. Do what you want. Everything can't be okay. Because otherwise we don't need this whole thing. We don't need the library, we don't need the books, we don't need the Aish, we don't need the Beis Medrash, we don't need the shul, we don't need anything. Make parties in the Hilton Suite and see if I care. That's the middle ground, and I think that's what people forget, that on the one hand, yes, we can be tolerant. On the other hand, we have to understand that even though we are tolerant, and this is the thing to understand a little bit about Pinchas, just an introduction to Pinchas, is that even though we are tolerant and even though we understand not everybody can keep everything and everybody comes from a different background and everybody grew up differently, and so it's not easy to say for everybody, it's not a one-size-fits-all. That's true. But if you don't stand for anything, then really what you stand for is worthless. And that's what Pinchas is showing us. I'm not advocating anybody going out and killing anybody. Get me right. Please, I've not said, for front page of the Jewish Telegraph, Rabbi Eisenberg says go out and kill people that do have errors. I'm not saying that, right? But have some form of bottom line where you say, beyond that, I can't tolerate. I cannot tolerate everything. Because if I do, then I'm worth nothing. And that's what the shalom is. Because there was a certain completeness. And again, we can't discuss it probably, but there's a certain completeness in the way Pinchas behaved, is that he didn't tolerate it. Everybody else watching says, what are we supposed to do about it? And Pinchas says, at one point or another, I'm going to draw the line. I can't allow everything. I just can't, because then I'm worth nothing. And I can't be worth nothing in Yiddishkeit, can't be worth nothing. Okay? Thank you very much for joining us. Hope you didn't miss too much in the match. Thank you for you joined us live. Please like or share and pass it on to others. And let's hope that England wins. I think they're doing okay.
That was really interesting. Thank you.